We're live. And then Instagram will give me a little go live here in a little bit. It should at least, but if not, yep, there we are. So we're live there too. Well, hey everybody. This seems like there's a little lag when people join in on the StreamYard, but we'll still do some introductions. I am Kari the Mortician. We're back with an interview series here. I was telling Dan off camera, this is like the longest in the making, I feel like, interview, because it's been, I think 2 years ago or so, I randomly hit upon your Instagram and saw what you do and was like, hey, would you ever want to do an interview? And you're like, sure, that'd be great. And then it went on my list, and then the list just grows, and I feel like I never get to anything. So thank you for joining me. So this is Dan from One Last Wave Project. And I keep wanting to say One Final Wave. So if I say it wrong, forgive me, everyone, but it's One Last Wave Project. So welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it has been a long time in the making. Yes. So I'm glad to finally be able to do this. And it does it. Yeah, I've had the One Last Wave, One Last Wave, One Last this. There's been a lot of different references to it. So it's the idea of it that makes sense to everyone. So it's fine, however it comes out.
And you're on the West Coast?
I'm on the East Coast.
Oh, East Coast. So where are you located?
Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay.
Yeah, nice. We launched a board on the West Coast, but sort of centered out of Newport, even though the board's going to go out everywhere.
Okay. I think I always just picture, because it's surfboard related, that you're out in California coast or something out there. I don't think of
sometimes I wish I was
surfing when I think of Rhode Island. So,
I know that's some of the nice things about it, but it does, I surf through the winter time. So it is sometimes we do wish that we were in California because.
Ooh, that sounds brutal.
Yeah, it is. Nice. There's a lot of surf culture here, especially, around hurricane season, which we tend to get quite a bit of. So the waves pick up nicely.
Great waves during it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Do you kite surf too?
I don't, but there's a lot of people that do. So depending on wind directions, if it's not great for the waves, then there'll be a lot of people out there, kiteboarding and windsurfing and that sort of thing. So there's a huge boating community. America's Cup was here a lot. So it's very, it's like very ocean centered. So it's just sort of a natural. When I moved here about 10 years ago, just sort of got into all that. Kind of hard not to when you're so close to the ocean. So
yeah. So what is kind of your background, career, and everything? And then we'll get into what Dan does. So Dan runs One Last Wave Project, and it is a in memory of program. So we're going to get into that in a minute, but I kind of want to hear your, what do you actually do? What is your daily do?
My life story. Yeah. Well, yeah, my life's sort of been all over as the waves come, I guess. I grew up in Canada and Montreal initially. Sort of always, my dad was an entrepreneur, so I kind of leaned in that direction, but studied a lot of math, science stuff. But there was always something in me that wanted to have more meaning in my job and connect with people in a different way. And so I created two companies. Initially, it was a paragliding company where we make high-end technical apparel for people that were jumping off of mountains and flying to cloud base and whatnot. And that was incredible. It was a real adrenaline rush for me. It was something I was really into. And then the second thing I created was a charitable organization where it was a sort of high endurance marathon running up and down football stadium stairs for 24 hours. And we'd use it to raise money for cancer research. So we'd often run 8 times the height of Mount Everest, any individual who completed the whole thing. It was a very extreme event, but a way to sort of give back and help out a good friend of mine who had lost his father to cancer. And then I went back to business school for a little while, became a consultant for a few years. And then all this sort of, there's a bigger story around One Last Wave that I can get into. But this was sort of the last piece of the puzzle for me in terms of being able to, for my career, to be able to combine a passion of mine with surfing, something that was very creative and artistic, and at the same time being able to give back to others and help myself along my own journey as well. So that's sort of how I sort of came into it. I was a little all over the place, as some of us are, in terms of really exploring, I guess, what I was passionate about. And that's sort of the aim of an entrepreneur. You're kind of an explorer in a way, sort of trying to go places where other people aren't and do it with inspiration and creativity. And that was sort of something that always resonated within me. So
When
kind
you
of
have
how
to
I,
have drive to do it and you have to have interest to do it. And, like
yeah.
I'm working on a patent on something. It has nothing to do with death care, but I find that I'm like wanting to like go do more because it's something new and it's exciting and it's kind of would be my little baby of a thing. And so I totally get where you're coming from with that. Like
You get to create something that other people find meaningful and useful in their lives. And I
yeah.
love that aspect of it all the time. But there's, a lot of people have ideas and inspiration. So it's one, I guess, being open to that inspiration that's all around us at any time. It can happen, as was with my story with One Last Wave, it can happen at any time. And then I think having the courage to pursue that inspiration is something that some people find challenging because there's a lot of fears connected to stepping outside of the traditional careers and pursuing something that has a little bit more uncertainty to it. And so whether it's a financial decision or a fear of failure, there's a lot of aspects to it, I think, that in many ways challenge people from taking that dive. So it's great that you are, but I can understand that, the pull to, I want to get to that thing over there.
Right. Well, and the patent lawyer, I met with him just to kind of get an idea. And he said, he's from my hometown. And he said, I've never had anyone from our hometown
Well,
actually get a patent. And I was like, challenge accepted. I was like, don't tell me nobody's done. Like, I want to be that person. So tell me, Dan is here. Again, guys, I'm Kari the Mortician, interviewing Dan Fisher from One Last Wave Project. And tell me the why behind this project. Like what was your catalyst to start this and how did it begin?
So it was very, very unexpected for me. I'd taken up surfing once I moved to Rhode Island about 10 years ago. Just loved the ocean. My father was battling pancreatic cancer and he battled it for 8 years. So there was a lot of up and down. There was times where, I felt like he was going to make it, and then times where we thought that he wasn't, and then he'd bounce back again. And 8 years with pancreatic cancer is pretty incredible as it was. He was a, very, very strong-willed individual. So in 2019, things sort of took a turn for, I guess, the end, not the worst. It was sort of the end. And I went up to Canada to help take care of him. He was in palliative care, but he didn't want to die in the hospital. And so we would wake up every night at 2 a.m. and he would walk the corridors to prove that he could actually get out of there, because he wanted to die by his cows at his farm in Vermont. And so we did that, went down and got the house ready, because it's up in the mountains in the middle of nowhere. There's no nurses, no care available. So it would just be the family that was helping take care of him. And then we sort of smuggled him across the border.
I love it.
Which is, when you hear his story when he came over as an immigrant, that was a lot of how he came to Canada in the first place. So then to leave it that way was kind of ironic. But we got him across the border, and I remember we got him to the house. He had a margarita. We watched Stand By Me, and he lived for probably another week and a half or so, and then passed away in Vermont. Looking out the window at his cows in the way that he wanted to. He lived his life the way that he wanted to. And so I think being there, having a chance to say goodbye and whatnot was really good for me. But at the same time, was also dealing with my best friend at the time, who was my dog, Rudy, who I'd had for 15 years.
Oh.
And he had been with me through anything and everything that you could go through, from, 25 to 40. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we all go through during that time.
What kind of dog is Rudy, though? I got to get a visual.
He was a Malamute. He looked like, he was sort of a chocolate lab mixed with a Malamute, but he looked like a brown bear. He was like 100 pounds, big face, just like the sweetest thing in the world. And we did everything together. And I talk about him, I always get emotional, because in many ways I spent more time, and even to this day, I've spent more time with him than any other being ever in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. So to lose that person or that thing that's so close to you, that security that's always there and always loving you, as dogs and animals are, was devastating. So 6 months after my dad died, Rudy passed away in my arms. So it was like sort of,
oh my God,
my two pillars of strength in my life really passed away in my arms. And I wasn't prepared for it at all, as we never are. You know, you're never prepared for grief until you start to go through it, and then you're sort of spinning and trying to find ways to deal with it. And that's the experience that I had. So if there was 2 years where I just sort of floated around, I felt very lost. I didn't feel connected to myself, or I guess to that feeling of love. I had maybe lost faith in happiness in a way, because I just felt numb to the whole experience. And I knew that wasn't what he would have wanted. I knew that wasn't honoring him in the way that he would have wanted. And my father and I were adventurers together always, not just as entrepreneurs, but you know, we paraglided in Alaska off the mountains. We climbed Kilimanjaro in Africa. We were always doing these bike rides and ventures, you know, 500-mile bike rides and stuff like that. He was always challenging me to test my physical limits and my mental willpower and whatnot. And so as I was in Rhode Island surfing, I thought to myself, you know, it was a very healing place for me. I was using it sort of as therapy. And so I thought to myself, maybe there'd be some way to honor that bond of adventure that we shared together. And so I just decided to write his name down on my surfboard on a little sticky note that I got at Walmart right at the front. And which wasn't the best idea because it's in the water, and that, you know, that makes sense. But it was what I was thinking. It was a way to bring him out there. And then being out there in the waves and a sunny day, it was just, it was a transformative experience for me, and really an epiphany that I could feel connected to him through that thing, through something like adventure that we shared. That was like the love side of our relationship and the bond we had. And this was sort of as COVID was peaking and whatnot. And I was thinking, you know, there's so many people in the world who are not able to connect to those that we're losing. I lost a grandmother and 2 aunts up in Canada, but I couldn't get up to the funerals because of all the border closures. So there were so many ways we weren't able to experience the life. And so I came out of the water thinking, maybe there's other people who would find comfort in this. And I just ran to my car, grabbed my phone, and recorded a TikTok video, which TikTok was also blowing up at the same time. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I just thought, hey, so I put out this invitation to say, if anyone would find this comforting to them who's lost someone, comment their name and I'll write them down on the board and take them out. And I woke up the next morning and it went viral. And then within the first week, we had filled up my first board with like over 2,000 names.
Holy Moses.
Yeah. And it was the next week I thought, wow, I better register this thing because this is a real thing. And the One Last Wave project was born the next week. And then it was just running from there. There was, you know, ESPN, CNN, the Associated Press, everybody was calling to try to get a piece of it and understand what this was. And I was just so overwhelmed by all of it, not just all the names and connecting to everybody, but it was just, it was a wild experience that run that first year. It really was. So
it's kind of a new adventure with your dad, though. You know,
right. Yeah, and we're still here. Yeah.
Gosh, he had a lot of life in his life. The things you guys did together.
Right up to the end. Right up to the end. He I think it was 6 months before he died. He knew that I had always dreamed. We had been there when I was probably in grade 8. We had gone to France. I was following the Tour de France because I was really into cycling. And we had gone to Alpe d'Huez, which is a really famous climb on the tour often. And I had thought I've always wanted to cycle that with him. And so 6 months before he died, he told me that's what we were going to do. We booked a trip, and he was in no state to walk down the street. And this mountain is it's massive even for someone who is super fit. And I remember, you know, we got there, drove for like 6 hours to get to the base of the mountain, rented the bikes. He fell off his bike twice on the way there. His knees were all bloody. But I said, Dad, maybe this isn't the right time to do this. And that's just who he was. He just said, no, we're doing it. And we did. And I was up there and I made it up and came back down to find him. And there he was, just cranking along, just unreal willpower in him. And so that's part of what this all was just finding a way to honor that bond and celebrate his life.
Was there any part of him, do you think, that thought, well, if I go out and I fail and I do this and this kills me, at least I'm dying doing, or was he so dead set that he was, well, I guess that's a terrible use of word. Was he so set that he knew he was going to accomplish this? Or do you think he was?
Yeah, that's how he was with everything. I mean, I taught him to snowboard, I think at 62, 65. You know, there was never a thought in his mind that he couldn't do something for the longest time. Whenever I was aware of someone's determination and will at a certain age, he was that pinnacle. It was just unbelievable to see. And he was like that he was an architect in his business. He was like that in every single thing that he did. So it didn't surprise me in the least that he did it. When I actually caught up to him on the bike on Alpe d'Huez, I asked him, I said, you know, like, what's taking you so long? He said, I mean, if you understand, there's like, I think it's 21 hairpin turns up this gigantic mountain, and there's, you know, tiny, there's no space on the side where you can stop. But he said, I took an hour nap. He like went off to the side of the road, took a nap on the side of the road on his bike, and then got back up and kept going. There was never a thought in his mind that he was going to stop. It was whatever it takes to get up. That's how he was with everything. Unbelievable.
What's his name?
Carl.
I love it.
Yeah.
When is he buried or cremated? Can I ask that?
Cremated. He's cremated. Yeah.
What'd you guys do with him?
He's still in Vermont.
In Vermont?
He's in his room in Vermont, still looking out at his cows. So he had a very long list of places that I'm to take him to, back up to the top of Kilimanjaro in Africa being one of them. So I have a list of trips I need to take in order to spread his ashes, but part of them will probably always stay in Vermont because that's where he was happiest. Yeah.
I was going to say, if he was buried. So what I found, and this is so going sideways right now, but several times I've taken people home, drove them past their farms, their cow farms, on the way to go be buried. And I'm not joking, numerous times, the cows at the wrong time of day are up by the fence waiting. It's like they knew. It's the weirdest like cow sense. And I didn't even know that was a thing. But it's happened so many times. I have goosebumps saying it because it's not logical. And the family's all like, they're not supposed to be up here. It's like, this is not where they're supposed to be, but they are. So I was going to ask if that happened, but I just.
Yeah, it's not surprising. I don't remember anything like that, but they were pets. They were not to consume.
Yeah.
So he was out there in the pasture with them all the time and would, you know, sit and pet them. And, you know, the Highland cows with the big horns and everything.
Yeah.
Huge beasts that, you know, could take you out in a second, but they're just such gentle giants. They're just precious. And he loved that. So no, one of the hardest things was actually getting rid of the cows a few years later. It just became too much for my mom to handle up there. So eventually she gave them away to a local farmer who took care of them and continued to go on with it. But interesting. I'd like to know. I know one of the dogs was in the room that time. Like Rudy was there. He jumped up on the bed. He kind of knew. He had a sense of what was happening.
Animals are amazing. And when people bring in like their pets to say goodbye to their owners at the funeral home, I love watching it just because animals, they all react different, just like humans do. But they know right away. And so I love including animals. I think they need to be included. They feel things.
I've seen a lot of that. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, you're good. We're gonna be all over the place. Well, let's talk about the boards. I mean, that's why we're here. You've got one behind you. I think what blew me away was how small these names are. And I'm like, there's that many people that would do it, but that's and you've done how many boards now?
So this is the 8th board, and it's going to be, I'm going to be shipping it. I was actually looking at shipping right now. Going to be shipped down to Florida this week or next week, and then it'll be launched somewhere down there.
So what does that look like? Tell us what a launch looks like when you do this event.
So it's sort of evolved over the last 2 years. The first 4 boards, I released all of them here in Rhode Island, and for me it was really about replicating the moment that I experienced with my dad that first time, that peaceful moment. So whenever I got the boards, one of the boards was made in Jersey, and I drove, it was a 12-hour there and back, picked up the
Wow.
board, came right back and went right to the ocean and took the board out right away. Because for me, I always feel so compelled to do that it's a process, a real process to make. Something could take 6 months to make these boards, get the names on, seal the boards, and then get them out in the ocean. And so when it's ready, I always try to make sure as quickly as I can to get people out there, because I know it's something that the boards go out all the time. I continue to surf the boards wherever they are in the world. But those first few being released in Newport, it was easy for me to do that. Then as the project sort of grew, people started to ask, can I come and attend? Up until that point, I was showing the boards, but it was really only after I had that initial moment, because I felt sort of compelled to offer that to all the loved ones who were on the board, not to make it a spectacle. I understand they're not trying to make it a spectacle, but I didn't want to be distracted by it. I really wanted to feel connected to the board, to everyone who's on there, and be able to experience those moments again. So then as we started to release them, we released one in South Africa, and then in Santa Cruz, and then in the UK in Cornwall as well. And those launches were much more heavily attended by people who have loved ones on the board, and they came from sort of all over to see it. And that's sort of how it's gone. This latest board, because of everything that happened in Florida over the last month or so, sort of delayed the launch, and I ended up taking it out here in Rhode Island. There weren't a ton of waves, but I was able to paddle out and catch a few waves on it, and then I'll ship it down there, and we'll sort of do an official launch with the surfer down there who's going to be taking it out. But really just an opportunity for families to be there, to see, to come. It's very emotional for them when they do. As often, I'm sure you know, but just seeing a name, whether it's, on a grave, or on a brick in a yard somewhere, or on a sign, seeing your loved ones. Yeah.
It's kind of a final thing. It's like seeing the obituary proof. Even like when you type up the obituary proof and you hand it to a family to look at, it's like, this is real, and we're doing, like each of those moments, I think, make it more real, because psychologically, I was taught long ago that in science, like psychologically, we are not meant to understand death and to process it and to make it all real, because our head and our hearts don't connect fully in that way. But every little thing that you can do to try and get your heart to understand what is your head is hearing helps. And so I can only imagine, like, seeing that name and knowing your love, like that was important to your loved one, and you doing something for them that they can't do for themselves anymore is amazing.
Yeah. And I'd like to know your thoughts on it, because grief is such a big piece of it. But is that, brain heart connection the same for love?
I don't know I don't know for sure, but I think we feel things. Sometimes it's logical to love someone. Like, I should love this person because of XYZ. And then sometimes you just feel feelings. And I think sometimes you're feeling with different things. It's not always this heart thing. Sometimes it's
Right.
logic, and, this makes sense. And this is why I'm here, because your heart fluctuates and such, just like waves do. But I think your brain is sometimes more consistent. If I had to give an answer, that's what I would think.
I'd agree with that. The reason why I ask is because when I going through this experience and running this organization, I've had to think a lot about it and ask questions and answer questions. And one of the things that sort of comes up a lot, at least for me, is that thinking about my own process in grieving, I wasn't prepared for it. But like, who really is prepared for it at that time? And not to say, as we go through our lives, we're learned to love at a young age. Like, you got to do this. If you love someone, do this. You got to act this way and this way. And if someone loves you, and then you get your heart broken a few times, or you break a few hearts, and you sort of learn to process the whole thing as you go, and mature, and become someone who can, love in the right way, receive love, give love. But with grief, you kind of, with some people, it's a lot younger, unfortunately. But for me, I was in my 40s, and that's pretty late in life to learn how to process something like that. and I felt so ill-equipped with it. So that's why I was, like hearing that disconnect makes sense. And I was just wondering, is it the same thing for love? Is it just because we repeat that process of learning love more often than we do grief, thankfully, or hopefully, that it's something that we, naturally come by? I don't know.
I think that, we sit down with people, like sitting down with a family. If I sit down with like 2 children, I have found more often than not, one is going to be a very emotional and one is going to be a very methodical, logical. That's how they're dealing with it. And the other one is all about the emotion and couldn't function very well. It's like you've got two personalities a lot of times, or like parents of a child. One's going to be very logical because that's how they deal with it, and one's going to be super emotional. And I see that a lot. And so, with grief, I think you could read every book about grief and you are still never going to be prepared. Like, you can't imagine a day without that person in your life because they're there. And especially like your parent dying, you never had a day in your life without your parent until that day that they're gone. So how can you even prepare for that, where you can't pick up the phone and call them? You can't, bounce an idea off them. You can't invite them to dinner. You can't do something with them. You can't ever prepare because they're always there until the moment they're not. So I think that there's just no preparation that you can ever do. There's nothing to get ready. It's going to be what it is when the time comes, I guess. And so I talk about it like when I got pregnant, I was like, I don't even want to think of having that baby. Like, that's going to be that baby coming out of me. Like, I don't want to think about it. So I blocked it out of my brain. And then once I was pregnant, I was like, well, here we are. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So to me, it's kind of some of the same, where you can't think over every scenario, and you kind of deal with what happens when it happens in some ways. I'm not like that with everything. I'm a worst case scenario planner, but that's, to me, like, sometimes you just got to block out because the end is inevitable. And if we sit and think about it and dwell on it, it consumes our whole lives. So you have to like let it be what it is when the time comes, I think, in some ways. But
yeah,
I
agree. It's easier to live a life thinking, hey, I'm going to experience this wonderful feeling of love a lot. It's hard to think about, I'm going to experience loss or death in general. I think human beings just have a hard time accepting that reality, even though we know it's reality. We have a hard time talking about it. I certainly did. My dad certainly did. That's what's been really helpful to me with the project, is being able to have these conversations all the time. And I actually just put up a video on our social pages with the focus of say their name, because I've had tons of conversations with different family members, and so much of what resonates with the project is the fact that their loved one's name and their life and memories are being remembered. And I always think that, it's just me writing a name on a board. It's not a huge gesture. It's just a name, but it's so much more in terms of what it represents, and being able to say it and hear it and know that they're out there and continuing to be remembered is so important. For me, having those conversations, being able to talk about my dad, my dog, hear other people's stories about how they grieve, things they've done, their experiences, you feel less alone, because up to that point, most people who are not going through it don't want to really talk about it, because it's that avoidance of, human nature to not want to put yourself around death very much.
Oh, for sure.
And accept that reality. So instead, initially when someone dies, there's a lot of condolences, and then those sort of fade away, and you're left wondering, do those people still think about my dad? Do people remember Rudy and that sort of thing? And it's only when you start having those conversations that piece connects to it. And I think that we all, it's a universal experience. We're all going to go through it. And so the more conversations you can have, I think it's really helpful. And that's been a joy for me to be able to do that through the project.
How many names do you fit on one surfboard?
It depends on the size of the board. So the first board was only on one side. And then as the names started to come in a lot more, then I started to make longer boards, and they were on both sides. This board just has it. This board has 1222 on just the top deck. And some boards will have that on both sides. So it'll be, 2,400 names or something on a board. So it really depends on, how many people, because it's a lot of now with each board, the incentive I think for people to have a loved one on there is often the location. So either, we traveled there, we lived there, we had a wonderful experience in that location where the board is going. I want to celebrate them then and there. And so some locations have more interest, some locations have a little bit less. And there's been actually some really incredible stories as I move along from that, of people that have been traveling sort of around the world to see a board. And one story in particular, there was a lady from Boston. I got a message from Sam, who is the guardian of the board in the UK in Cornwall. And I got a message saying there's a woman that was coming to see him. He had done sort of a launch and celebration, and everybody had left. And he got a last minute message saying, "Can you stay for 5 more minutes?" And he said sure. And so then this lady showed up, and she was wearing a One Last Wave t-shirt, got a picture with the board, and then walked into the ocean and just stayed there for like 5 minutes, just with her feet in the water. And then she left. Seems pretty normal. But what I didn't realize is she had flown from Boston to London on like Friday night, woke like in the morning, like when the plane came, got a car, drove all the way to Cornwall, which I think is like 6-7 hours, if I'm not mistaken. Drove all the way to Cornwall, was with the board for a minute, and then in the water for 5 minutes, and then got back in the car and drove back to the airport, and then flew back to Boston.
Oh my gosh. Because
she felt so compelled to see the board and her loved one's name on the board that she did that. And there's been many, many stories like that of people doing that. So when I heard it, I was amazed with someone's devotion to their loved one to do that, again, for something, just writing a name on a board, but what it really meant to them in terms of the comfort that it would provide. And also I started thinking, like, I know when I was going through it and I felt paralyzed in my grief, I didn't feel like traveling and going out. So part of, I think, what the project does in terms of names and where people are putting them is it gives you an opportunity to live again. And you can travel around the world to see a board, to see your loved one. What that really does for you is it gets you back and living and into the world, whereas we're often feeling that paralysis because of the grief. So it was just a beautiful story, and I connected with her after, and I was just amazed. I needed to know, like, why would you do that? And it was just beautiful to hear her connection to the board and her loved one, and what it meant for her to be there, just to experience that. So it was just really amazing.
How many names do you have in waiting for boards?
There's not like a backlog of names. Okay. There certainly was the first year. I just I couldn't.
There's no way.
I couldn't put out boards fast enough, and that became a little overwhelming because I respond to every single email submission that comes in, and I want to connect to it because it's not, hey, here's the name and that's it. There's often a long, in-depth story about how important this person was to them, what their dreams were, what the things they accomplished were, what a wonderful human being they were. And so for me, I don't want to just, automate things and say, yes, thank you, you're accepted. I write back and try to connect with each family member, and often we go back and forth a few times. So for me, this works out a lot better where, if it can be, 100 submissions a week, that's okay. Like I can still handle that, and I want to.
Still, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it is, but that was coming in like thousands a week that first time. So it was just impossible to get through all the emails. It just took so long, and so part of me wants it just to grow organically so that I can continue that piece of it, because it really is important for me, the whole process of it. Like each board is made by hand, and then it takes me a week and a half to write everyone's name down on the board. And as I write the names, I'm like remembering the emails, the stories, the connection I had with the family members. And so each one goes on, with care. And then when they get surfed, the same thing. I'm out in the water, I look down at the board and I see a name and I connect to it. So all of it it's it's a deeply emotional experience for me, and I want to be able to continue that and offer that to families too. As
Therapy. I mean,
yeah,
you're doing a lot of therapy doing this.
yeah, it is challenging sometimes. I'll admit that it's deeply emotional, but at the same time, I know that what I'm doing is helping people, and I can deal with that. I think if it was just all the emotions and none of the positive side of it,
Yeah.
that would be it'd be a lot harder to cope with. As anyone working in that field, as you know, I mean,
It's a lot. Yeah.
it's a lot. Yeah.
Are you surfing the board the first for that final ride?
Yeah.
Each
Yeah.
one? So you go to
I
each location?
no, so I try to. That's why those first 4 launches were the one that went off in South Africa was the 5th, and we had the people that made the fin for the board, they helped take that board out, and the shaper took the board out, and then other people have taken it out since, and lots of people have gone to South Africa to see that board too. Then in Santa Cruz, same thing. We had a sort of a local surfer take that out, and then in the UK, Sam, he had lost his best friend, and then wrote to me. His best friend was on a previous board, and he wrote to me saying, you know, could I launch a board here and, you know, take that on? So he was able to do that, and so he took that board out, and he continues to do that and show it to families. So he's sort of like the guardian of that board,
That's
and
cool.
I'm happy to have that. As he was going through the process of building the board, his father passed away,
Oh,
and so it just the whole experience for him became a lot more in depth, I think, in terms of how connected he was to the process and what it meant for him in the end. So it was a lot.
he needs a hat or a shirt that says like board guardian. Like he needs
Yeah, I think he should. Yeah.
something that like gives him the title. I love the name, like the guardian. It's
That's
so
a great idea, actually. I should say. I
it's
just
very
I just sent him
Marvel.
one because he had ordered one. I sent him another one. I should have written Guardian on it. That's a great
I
idea.
love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, I
So
tried to do that on the website to have because it doesn't work out all the time. If we can find someone who has a connection, so the same thing. The girl's going to be taking this board out. She lost her mother, and her mother's on sort of the tail end of the board. So for her too, there's a deep connection to it, and I like to have that. It doesn't always work out that way, and I'm happy to be the one to do it. But at a certain point, I want to be able to share the boards and the process and the healing that they provide to as many people as possible. And I know that's not always going to be me who can write the words on there and take the boards out. Like at a certain point, it'll probably change. But for now, if I can, I try to do as much of it as I can.
do you have the next board planned out, like where board 9 is going to go?
I do.
Oh, secret at this point. Gosh, dang.
No, it's not really secret. I try not to put too much of it out there while this board is getting ready to be launched, but it'll probably pretty sure it's going to go off in Norway. So I've been in conversation with the guys from the northernmost surf shop in Norway. So the idea would be to launch the 9th board under the northern lights and just have a beautiful experience for everyone under there. So that's the push for it. And I think it's going to be
climbing like a epic mountain here of moments.
yes,
like
that's so I hope to attend. I really hope to attend that one. I think the folks from J-Bay in South Africa are going to help make that board and the fin, and then quite possibly get the names on. And then they have a connection to that surf shop. They come like 2 times a year to J-Bay to get fins and whatnot. And so I think they'll probably pick the board up and bring it up there. So I've thought about, as many people as they want to, go up there and do that. It'd be great to just have like one launch all together up there under the northern lights would be pretty epic. So
I'm picturing like from the shore, you're looking out and you've got like surfers sitting on their board and then one like riding in the northern lights. And it's like, how epic of a moment. That's
that's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm really hoping for.
It's gonna be hard to top that one.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's been so much interest in different places, and I'd love to put boards out as often as I can. It really is making sure we do it in a way that respects everyone who's on there and not push the process too quickly through. So if I can do 2-3 boards a year, that's probably about what it is, I think, now.
Do people pay to have their loved one's name on the boards? No.
It was So early on, I didn't want to be doing that. There was a lot of people that wanted to support the project because of what it was bringing to them, and I understood that, but I never wanted anyone to feel alienated. Like, I can't experience this because I don't have the money to pay for it. So for me, having people pay just limited that reach of, connection and peacefulness that it would bring. So I didn't, and I still haven't, and we will never have people pay to have loved ones on there. But we do raise money for the boards through our shop. So in the first year, sort of the end of the first year, I had a lot of people saying, how can we help support the project? And I donate. And I was like, I don't accept donations or anything like that. Like, I'm just doing this to try to help. But they really wanted a piece of the project that they felt connected to, something commemorative or whatnot. And had many, you should do this, you should do this, you should do this, like. So eventually we decided I'll just do t-shirts or whatnot, or like that, sweatshirts and stuff like that. And so I launched the shop in the second year, and now all the sales. So whenever someone's on a board, he's a really, really wonderful artist. He creates sort of an image of the location where the board is being launched. And then turns it into a piece of art, and we'll put that on t-shirts, on canvases and whatnot. And so anyone who's on that board can, if they want, I'm never like, go buy something. It's never, it never feels right to me, but people do, and they want to support the project, and they want to wear something that has their loved one's name on it and has a piece of that. So that's what we do. And then it's been wonderful, actually. Every board has been supported by families who had loved ones on a previous board. It's sort of this pay it forward way of helping others heal with grief. Like, this really helped me heal. I'm in a place now where I want to help the next person heal. And it's sort of gone on and on like that. So if that can continue, that's just another way that we all sort of connect, whether it's, through the oceans, through grief, all these experiences we're going through, and also paying it forward in that way to help others. So I think for the families, they feel they're honoring their loved one, they're helping support the project, and there's a way for them to help others, knowing that's where that's going. So it's just been nice.
That's when I was Googling to like find some images to put together things to post for our interview. I saw some sweatshirt things, and now that you explain, they're old style, because I was like, I want that when I go to the shop. I was like, it's not in the shop. What is going on? But that
should be in the shop. It should be in the shop.
The one with the car, the like truck on it where it's down by the water.
Those should be in there. If you go in boards, if you go in the shop, there's board specific. So each of the boards will be on there. The first 4 boards were very similar in terms of the board switched, but the image stayed the same.
Board specific apparel. I've just was looking under hoodies and sweats. So there.
So they should have. There you go.
That's awesome that you can see the different. Yeah, that's so cool.
So those are all the different locations. So Raul is the one who designs that. He's a Spanish artist, and just
where is board 6 at?
Board 6 is in Santa Cruz. But it's here. It's here at my house, but it was launched in Santa Cruz. So all the U.S. boards are with me here, so that I can ensure that they go out all the time. If I have a guardian, like maybe the one in Florida with Kaylin, she might be able to do that. But otherwise, I'll keep them here just to make sure that the boards continue to go out, because they're also, unlike other surfboards. If you ding another surfboard, no big deal. You can repair it, whatnot. Like, if one of these gets dinged or damaged, you're losing names, and it's really, really hard to fix that. And so I really try my best to make sure that the boards are all safe and accounted for in that way. So that's the way I do it, like that.
Because you're the guardian.
Yes.
The OG guardian.
One of these, I guess, the OG guardian. That's right.
I love it. What would be, where would you love to see this get to? 100 boards, like just wherever?
So it's interesting. I thought initially we had these conversations where I don't want the board, you're on board 53 or 91 or something that seems less significant. I think the first 10 are going to be like that. And then after that, they'll probably really start to be named in terms of location or year or something specific to that. I've had a lot of people write saying, could you do a board for, pediatric cancer or
Oh.
People who died in the war or veteran, something like that. A lot of different, one that's just animals. I've had interest in people wanting me to do that, but all the boards there's like an inclusivity to it. Same thing in terms of the money aspect of it. I don't want people paying to have their loved one on there. I don't want to receive a submission for a board in Norway that's only geared to certain people who have lost their lives in a certain way, to then have someone write and say, but I would love to have my loved one on this board. It meant so much. And to have to say, no, you can't do that. So I've sort of stayed away from that. But in terms of number, yeah, I don't have a number. I have ideas of what I'd like to do after 10 boards, probably, because it has been such an experience over I guess 2.5 years, 3 years, almost 3 years now, 3 years. Just for me, in terms of going through the process of this all, connecting with people, making the boards, doing interviews, my own grief process, and just all the incredible stories that I've received. So at the end of 10 boards, I want to do something special with it all to sort of bring them all together. I haven't figured out exactly what that is. But after that, as long as it provides healing to people, I'll keep making them. If people are done with it, then they'll be done. Like, it's really up to them. Like, I'm more than happy to keep making boards. It's something I'm really passionate about. I love to surf. I love to find healing in the ocean, and I love to be able to help people. So it's something that I want to be able to keep doing if they want me to. Yeah, it's really up to them.
Are you finding the people that are submitting names that these individuals were ones that love the ocean, they surfed, or is this just kind of random? Because I think that was my original thought, was like, how many surfers that die can there be?
Yeah.
And then I saw the boards and I was like, are there really that many people that have? So what are you finding with that?
You know what? I think I thought it was always that we're all connected through the ocean, of course. And there's something just innately healing about it. Whenever you see someone by the ocean, there's a happiness to them. And I always went there to clear my mind, to find healing. Even when my father was still around, it wasn't about that. Now it's a little bit of a different meaning. But having us all be, connected in that way is something that's the aspect of it that I wanted to sort of harness with it. But it really is about nature and the ocean and connection. I've had people submit something that has nothing to do with the ocean at all. It really doesn't matter. Or pets. I lost a pet, or a child who never got a chance to go to the ocean. Some of the early submissions were, I had a young daughter who always wanted to swim with the dolphins and never got a chance. Can you take them out there? Or I had people who were in palliative care who said, my one wish was always to get to the ocean, and I haven't died yet, but can you be sure to write my name on the board so that I can finally achieve that dream of getting to the ocean? More submissions than you would imagine from people in palliative care who wanted to be on the board. And the kids were the hardest, always the hardest. And then a lot of those individuals who were still there, but thinking about how they wanted to be celebrated after the fact. There was a story, I wrote it in, it was Upworthy, that put out a book recently about good people doing good things. And one of the stories, they asked me to write a story about it. And the one that I wrote was about a woman named Marlene. And she wrote to me from, oddly enough, she was in the same palliative ward that my father was in 2 years later. And she was a nurse in that hospital where he was as well during that time. She thought of herself as a real ocean, even though she was living in Montreal away from the ocean, she thought of herself as really an ocean girl. And we talked back and forth for like 2 weeks. We were exchanging emails all the time, and I wrote her name down on the board. And then eventually the emails stopped. But I shared a lot of, in that story, in that book, I shared a lot of that connection that we had to my father. Like, she helped me deal with a lot of the emotions I was coping with at the time. Just just and I can't tell you how many stories like that have come up over the past few years with just odd but beautiful connections with individuals and their stories, and somehow find a way together. I post some of them where, people coming from, thousands of miles away end up on this hiking trail alone, and they end up crossing paths with someone wearing the One Last Wave t-shirt from the same board that their loved one's on, and they walk by them on the trails, and they stop and they took a picture and sent it to me. It's
Gosh.
like, how is that possible? Like, that's not random. It's just
No.
I don't know. There's a lot of stories like that I get, that I'm just amazed at how connected we all are, and in
Mhm.
certain times that's brought to us.
Do you get a lot of photos sent to you of the people
Yeah,
that they
I
want the
did.
names?
Yeah. I allow people to sort of do whatever they want. Initially, I had asked for photos from individuals, and I always received them. Now I don't wanna, same thing, like, sometimes I'll just get a name, and I never wanna feel like, "Okay, you gotta submit first and last name, you gotta submit the story, you gotta submit this, you gotta submit a photo," all this sort of stuff. Everyone's grief process is different, and I just leave it up to people, whatever they wanna do, however they wanna submit it. It's no longer a form, it's just an email. Just email what you feel comfortable doing, and then we'll leave that. But I do receive lots of pictures. Sometimes when I do, uh, you know, memorials or meetups where I've done paddle outs with people's ashes, we'll meet at the beach with the board, and they'll ask me to take their loved one's ashes out into the water. I'll
Oh,
throw roses. Yeah, and often they'll bring pictures of their loved ones to show me. And even though I know the names and know the stories, seeing the smiles on those faces in those pictures just really gets to me in those moments with the families, and we just connect, have a moment together. It's difficult, it really is difficult, but it's, again, something positive I'm able to give to them, and that brings something back to me as well.
you're a death care worker, Dan. Like, you didn't know that was what you were gonna be, but you really are in a lot of
I
ways.
didn't. I didn't know that, and again, I feel blessed to be able to do that through surfing, which is, I don't know. I just couldn't imagine something better right now. Just being able to surf and do something I'm passionate about and help people in that way. It's wonderful.
Yeah, turn it into, like, snowboarding and, like,
Yep.
different downhill ski, like, you could do all sorts of sports and
I
bowling
know.
balls, come on.
Listen, I've had many people say, "I love your idea. I want to do, one last pitch, or one last
Oh
ski,
my
or one
gosh.
last hike." Or I've had a guy who does it with his boats now. He writes the names on a sail. And sometimes people write to me and say, "Would you mind if I use this idea to do this?" There's more than enough people to help. I'm never opposed to it, but I never want the project to feel like it's, as was your idea, like it's only surfers. It's not. The reason why I chose the ocean is just I really do feel like we are all connected in that way, and it is such a healing place for everybody.
Mhm.
Not everyone's connected through skiing, even though my dad and I were, and we love to ski and snowboard and all sort of stuff, and I'd love to do that. But for me, it's just there's something symbolic about the ocean too. No one really is like, one more frigid, cold ski run. Like we're always when I was skiing, it was, let's do, like, 8 runs, and then let's get into the restaurant and warm up and have some hot chocolate and a burger or something. Nobody was dying to be out there in the freezing temperatures till 6 o'clock and the sun goes down. Like, that just wasn't the same experience.
Yeah.
But with surfing, it really is that the idea of, even though they've passed away, the one last wave is, there's always another wave coming. And as surfers, whenever you're in the water, and I say it every single time I'm out there, this will be the last one. And you catch the wave and you're on the wave and you feel that euphoria of surfing, the adrenaline. And then you get off the board and you think, okay, let's do one more. And you paddle back out and do it again. And it's over and over again. And the sun is setting. You think, I got to go in. That's the experience, is that there's always another opportunity to honor our loved ones, even though they've passed away. And that's the idea behind the project, is it's an active memorial and one that continues to honor them. So that's why the boards continue to go out all the time. That's the idea.
I love it. And the symbolism of how grief works with the ebbs and the flows and the waves and the,
Right.
highs and the lows of it is very symbolic in it too. So I think other avenues that you could do kind of some of that same, like you're saying, you know, the sale or whatever, it would be diluted in a way
Right.
by
Yep.
doing some of it. So I love it. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for that. Like, so magical. I told Dan, like, I don't want to know when I go in to interview someone, I try not to do a lot of dive into the history of it, because I like to learn things and have natural reactions to the stories. And I mean, I didn't know the Rudy story and all of it. And so I'm so glad to have like learned with everybody watching. So thank you so much for being so willing to share.
I was really happy to be here and share what I could. So thank you.
I know. I want to see a picture of Rudy though at some point. You'll have to email me a picture of Rudy.
I will. Yeah, there's my whole other Instagram account was devoted to him. So it's wants to see it. It's Paradrenaline is the other Instagram. Sometimes I'm tagging it there, but it was the whole account devoted to that beautiful boy.
I'll have to go find it, because yeah, I love me some dog stuff. I'm a big, I have a horse right now. His name is Eddie. He's a Bernedoodle. Well, he's a Bernedoodle, but he's like 85 pounds, I think, at this point, and he's a puppy. He's just one.
Oh, I've got another one right here. Actually, I've got two of them that are. I said I would never get another dog after Rudy passed away, and now there's two rescues with me now. Yes, there they are.
And they come and they talk, and I try and do videos now, and Eddie will be like, okay, you're done. Yeah. It's time to.
For one of them, she's very food driven. So she knew it was dinner time when I was about to step on this interview, and I could tell she was already not happy about it. So
I think Ed ate a half a box of Cheerios one day when I was doing an interview, because I just sat here and fed him. He was fine as long as I was handing him Cheerios one at a time. He was great. And
I saw one of yours, and I saw you handing something. I don't know if it was the Cheerios, or maybe that happens in all of your.
Who knows? Yeah. Well, I always try and keep treats, because and he talks, and I have never had such a human tight. He stands up and hugs me. That's all he wants to do, is stand and hug you like a human. But his face is at my face. He's just a beast of a baby. I just love him. But
I love big dogs. That's my kind of thing. These guys are a little smaller. They're 65, 70 pounds. So to me, that's a small dog after Rudy. But I like the bears. The bears or the cows, I guess.
We went to an orchard, I'll say this, on Saturday quick, and there was puppies, and they had one left that hadn't been like adopted. All of them were still there. They're Bernese Mountain Dog puppies. So, I mean, they're this big and they're not ready to go home yet. And my girls are like, Mom, but Ed needs a friend. I was like, if I come home with that thing, I said, Ed will love it. But can you even imagine what our house will be like? Because that dog is going to be big. That's going to be a big with Ed, and we're going to need a king-size bed just for the dogs. They're just crazy.
Oh, it is. That's when I had Rudy. He was also, I got him 5 weeks old. Aww. They were giving them away at a grocery store because the people who had, it was up in Vermont, same place. They were giving them away. Nobody wanted him. He was the last one, the runt of the litter. He was just in the box. These like blue eyes, and I just can't. Oh, I miss that guy. But it was always one dog, so it wasn't. The energy was different. Now with two rescue dogs, it's crazy. It just feels like chaos all the time. They're absolutely in love. They sleep next to each other. They're licking each other. They're playing all the time. They entertain each other all the time. And I feel bad that Rudy never had that.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's like a zoo in here sometimes, just going crazy. But I'd have 10 dogs if I could. I
know. It's hard to leave them. I'm constantly sending Josh pictures, because every German Shepherd that I see that comes through like rescue, I'm like, but maybe we need them. But maybe, and he's like, no. He's like, can you even imagine? And I was like,
the hardest decision was Pet Finder, I think it was, it was an app, and they probably still have it now.
Yeah.
But this was during COVID, right after Rudy passed away, and I got Pet Finder just to, browse for dogs. It's better than browsing for humans. I was browsing for dogs.
It's better than Tinder.
But the hard thing is, every dog it's yes. Fill the cart. It's just the worst. I know if I opened it up now, I'd have another dog tomorrow. Like that's just how it was. And one of them, my Penny, there was like 120 applications. Like everybody was dying to get dogs at that time. She's a Saint Bernard boxer mix, and he's
Oh,
a Great Pyrenees Husky mixed with a very, very, very small hound of some sort. So he has all the coloring and looks like a husky mixed with a Pyrenees, but he's tiny compared to what they would be. She's more of a meathead than he is. So
some wild breeding going on there.
yes, yeah, that's how it was. But love it. Wouldn't have it any other way.
Oh, well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Dan. And go shop at the shop, guys. I'm gonna go now that I know where to buy that shirt. I can't wait. I love it. It was so cute. So
We just put out one line called the One Love collection, and
oh,
that was also just designed recently. It comes in a blue heart and a pink heart, and also designed by Raoul. But that's the one
oh,
I'm wearing sort of right now, I guess. And it's all on the back with it too. That one I really like a lot, just the design of it, because the initial ones I was always hesitant to just say like really put it out there. This is the One Last Wave project, but I like people come up and talk about it. That's a big thing, is the stories I get back from individuals. You know, I was in a class, or I was walking, or I was on a trail, or was somewhere, and someone saw the shirt and came up and asked me what it was about. And of course, we're all connected through grief, and so it gives people an opportunity to then share their story about what the project is. And I receive emails from those individuals after, so it's a really nice way to connect. And so I try to do that with our latest design, is have it be a story that people can share.
is this picture so in the magnet? Is that your dad in the picture?
Yeah, that's my dad. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Good
Oh,
old Carl. Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks everybody for joining. Check out the shop, and we'll see you Wednesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for another interview with someone. Bye, guys.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.